Bloodlines of Redemption, a Red Dead Redemption story. Chapter 1, Unlikely Encounter. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the rolling plains of New Austin. A warm breeze carried the scent of dry earth and sagebrush through the air as it rustled the tall prairie grass. Charlie McAllister, a woman of 25 with fiery red hair and a determined gaze, had spent her entire life on the McAllister Ranch, and she knew every crevice and hillock of this land like the back of her hand. Charlie had just returned from rounding up the cattle when the sight before her stopped her in her tracks. A trail of bloodstains marred the earth, leading to a small grove of mesquite trees. Her heart quickened as she drew her revolver and approached the grove with cautious steps. What she found there would change her life forever. Lying beneath the shade of the mesquite trees was a man, battered and bloody, his clothes tattered, and his face as pale as the moon. Charlie lowered her revolver as she knelt beside him, her heart heavy with concern for the stranger. Gently, she rolled him onto his back, and his eyelids fluttered open. The stranger's eyes were a striking shade of blue, filled with pain and confusion. He tried to speak, but all that escaped his cracked lips was a dry wheeze. Charlie quickly fetched her canteen, holding it to his lips as he drank thirstily. His grateful sigh echoed through the grove, and he managed to croak out a weak, "Thank you." With a mix of curiosity and compassion, Charlie inquired, "What happened to you? Who did this?" The stranger winced in pain, but managed to speak. "Bounty hunter. Got ambushed." As he spoke, Charlie's sharp eyes noticed the emblem on his duster, a silver star hanging from the collar. A lawman turned bounty hunter, she surmised. His wounds were not only physical, but seemed to go much deeper. "My name is Charlotte McAllister, but folks around here call me Charlie." She introduced herself, offering a hand to help the man sit up. "What should I call you?" He hesitated for a moment, as if wrestling with the weight of his own identity. Finally, he whispered, "Elias Blackwood, but most call me Eli." Charlie nodded and helped him lean against a tree, where he could sit more comfortably. "Well, Eli, you're lucky you ended up on my land. My pa taught me a thing or two about fixing up wounds." As she tended to his injuries, Eli began to open up, the pain of his past and his present etched across his face. He told Charlie about his time as a member of a notorious gang back east, the mistakes he'd made, and his desperate quest for redemption. Charlie listened, her green eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and determination. She, too, had a story etched in her heart, the memory of her parents murdered by a gang led by a man known as Silas, Snake Eyes, Quillen. That name, spoken aloud, seemed to resonate with Eli, as if it held significance. "You know, Eli," Charlie said, her voice filled with conviction, "I have a score to settle with an outlaw named Snake Eyes. He took my parents from me, and I've been hunting him ever since. I aim to see him pay for what he did." Eli nodded, understanding the pain of loss and the thirst for vengeance. "I'll help you, Charlie. It's time I start making amends for my own past." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the mesquite grove, Charlie and Eli forged an unlikely alliance that would set them on a path of retribution and redemption. The American West, with its untamed landscapes and lawless frontiers, would bear witness to their journey as they embarked on a quest that was anything but certain. Chapter 2. The Pursuit Begins. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the vast western sky in hues of fiery red and fading orange, the unlikely pair set forth on their journey. Charlie's heart raced with a mix of determination and anticipation. Her father's old hat sat low on her head, a testament to the legacy she now carried, while her trusty steed, A muscular and sturdy bay named Thunder was saddled and ready. She had packed supplies for the road, her saddlebags bulging with jerky, beans, and a small medical kit. Eli, on the other hand, sat tall in the saddle, a figure of weathered resolve. He wore a long, brown duster that flapped in the wind like a tattered flag of battle, and his unshaven face bore the scars of a hard life. The brim of his hat shadowed his piercing eyes, which gleamed with the light of determination. He had a Colt .45 revolver holstered at his side, worn but meticulously maintained. Their horses pounded the trail, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. They followed the lead that had brought them to Armadillo, a town that had seen better days. As they approached, the silhouette of the settlement appeared on the horizon, mirage-like. Armadillo, like many towns in these parts, was a place where law and chaos danced on the razor's edge. It had once been a thriving center of commerce, but the spread of the railroad had shifted the fortunes of the region, leaving the town in decline. As they rode through the dilapidated outskirts, Charlie couldn't help but feel a sense of melancholy. Her childhood memories were interwoven with the bustle of this place, and now it was a mere shadow of its former self. Eli guided his horse towards the hitching post outside the local saloon, tying it securely. Charlie did the same, her eyes scanning the town's inhabitants, who moved about with an air of caution. Dusty cowboys, weary travelers, and a few suspicious figures with rough edges populated the boardwalks. It was the perfect setting for outlaws to hide, and for bounty hunters to find their prey. Inside the saloon, the air was thick with the smell of whiskey, and the clinking of glasses provided a discordant soundtrack to the murmurs of patrons. The pair strolled to the bar, where a grizzled bartender with a permanent scowl eyed them warily. Eli leaned in, his voice low and his eyes never leaving the bartender's. "We're looking for information, friend, about a man named Snake Eyes. You seen him?" The bartender hesitated for a moment before reluctantly nodding towards a group of regulars huddled at the corner table. "Yeah, I seen him and his gang around here, but I ain't one to go spilling beans to strangers. Them folks ain't to be trifled with." Charlie's hand inched towards the stock of her Winchester rifle slung across her back. She cast a sideways glance at Eli, who responded with a barely perceptible nod, signaling that they should be cautious. As they approached the table, the gang members, sporting tattered clothes, greasy hair, and the unmistakable air of menace, cast wary eyes on the newcomers. Snake Eyes, an imposing figure with a scarred face and a cold, calculating gaze, was the last to turn. His grin was as wicked as the rumors that had preceded him. In this dimly lit corner of the saloon, the pursuit of vengeance was about to take an even more perilous turn, and a battle of wits and nerves would unfold in the shadowy heart of Armadillo. Chapter 3: Clues and Conflicts. The midday sun hung low on the horizon as the duo rode into Armadillo, the dust devils swirling around the sun-bleached buildings. A few disinterested locals glanced their way as they passed, but the majority continued with their business, barely acknowledging their presence. Charlie kept her hand steady on the reins, and her hazel eyes swept the scene for any sign of trouble. Beside her, Eli maintained his stoic demeanor, his eyes scanning the bustling town. Armadillo was a curious mix of frontier hubbub and lawlessness. Its rough-hewn wooden buildings stood as a testament to the pioneer spirit that was fast fading in this part of the country. Despite the encroaching presence of the law, the outlaw undercurrent remained ever palpable. They tethered their horses to a hitching post and stepped onto the dusty main street, eyes still watchful. Eli motioned toward the town saloon, a dingy, weather-beaten structure that bore witness to more bar brawls and gunfights than a man could count. "Let's start by gathering some information in there." Inside the dimly lit saloon, The atmosphere was thick with the acrid scent of spilled whiskey and the raucous laughter of men. The pair found an empty table in a shadowy corner and ordered 2 drinks, keeping their eyes peeled for any hint of Snake Eyes or his gang. Charlie leaned in closer to Eli, her voice barely above a whisper. You reckon there's any chance someone here knows where to find that son of a gun? Eli's piercing blue eyes remained fixed on the room, watching a group of men playing poker. There's always a chance, he replied, a hint of guarded optimism in his voice. We just need the right words to loosen tongues. The bartender, a burly man with a mop of unkempt hair, approached their table, and they exchanged some casual banter before casually steering the conversation toward Snake Eyes. The bartender lowered his voice, his eyes darting around to ensure no one was listening too closely. Word is, he's been seen around these parts, he confided, his tone hushed. But you didn't hear it from me. You best be careful, though. Snake Eyes and his boys ain't the sort to take kindly to strangers sniffing around. Charlie nodded in gratitude, slipping him a few coins before taking another sip of her drink. They continued to gather information discreetly throughout the evening. Whispers in the saloon hinted at Snake Eyes' hideout in the nearby cliffs, where his gang allegedly holed up between jobs. As the night wore on, the poker game grew rowdier, and the men became more careless with their words. That's when it happened. A hulking figure with a scarred face and a snake tattoo on his forearm entered the saloon. The place fell silent for a moment, and the men at the poker table exchanged nervous glances. Snake Eyes, Charlie murmured to Eli, her hand inching toward the grip of her revolver. Eli gave a slight nod, his fingers subtly resting on the handle of his own weapon. They watched as Snake Eyes approached the poker table, his icy blue eyes scanning the room. There was a palpable tension in the air, a coiling spring ready to snap. Snake Eyes spoke with the poker players, his low, gravelly voice barely audible over the saloon's din. A few moments later, he turned and left. The men at the poker table heaved sighs of relief, and the room slowly returned to its boisterous state. Charlie and Eli exchanged a knowing look. They had found Snake Eyes, and he was closer than they had ever imagined. But the confrontation they had been dreading was now just a heartbeat away, lurking like a shadow in the depths of the Wild West's heart. Chapter 4: Shadows of the Past. Armadillo, a dusty town on the edge of the desert, was bustling with life as the sun began its descent below the horizon. The streets were teeming with cowboys, traders, and the unmistakable scent of horse manure. It was here that Charlie and Eli had come, drawn by whispers and rumors of Snake Eyes and his gang's recent activities. As they strolled down the crowded main street, Charlie couldn't help but feel like a stranger in her own land. Armadillo had always been a place of business for her family's ranch, but now it was just another dusty waypoint on a dangerous path. Eli's eyes darted around nervously, his experience as an outlaw never truly leaving him. He knew that the West was vast, but it was also small when you counted the number of eyes watching your every move. As they passed the saloon, a group of rough-looking men sat outside, playing cards and laughing. One of them, a scruffy man with a crooked grin, locked eyes with Eli. Recognition flashed in the man's eyes, and he stood abruptly, knocking over his chair in the process. The tension in the air grew palpable as the others followed his gaze. Blackwood, the scruffy man growled, revealing a missing tooth. I knew I'd find you someday. Eli's hand instinctively hovered over the handle of his revolver, but he didn't draw. His jaw tightened, and he addressed the man. Stag, I never thought I'd see your ugly mug again. Charlie felt the unease in the atmosphere as the townsfolk began to realize that something was amiss. She whispered to Eli, What's going on here, Eli? Stag and his gang approached, surrounding Charlie and Eli. Stag's gang members were a motley crew of misfits, all bearing the unmistakable look of outlaws who had seen more than their fair share of trouble. Stag chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent shivers down Charlie's spine. You thought you could just waltz back into town, did you? You've got some explaining to do. Eli's gaze remained unwavering. I've left that life behind, Stag. Just passing through. Stag's eyes narrowed, and the tension escalated. You left us high and dry, Eli. When you rode out, you took more than your share of the loot. Eli sighed, his voice tinged with regret. Stag, I couldn't stay with that life. It was a death sentence. I had to leave, and I had to leave with something to survive. Stag's grip tightened on his own weapon. Well, we've been surviving too, and we ain't too keen on letting you walk away without paying your debt. Charlie's heart pounded as she saw the standoff escalating. Eli's hand remained poised over his revolver, ready to draw if needed, and Stag's gang members were getting more agitated. Just as the situation seemed about to spiral into violence, the saloon doors burst open. The town sheriff, a grizzled lawman with a scarred face, strode out, his hand on his own pistol. What's going on here? The tension thickened, and Stag's gang members shifted uneasily. The sheriff's arrival had thrown a wrench into their plans. Eli seized the opportunity and whispered to Charlie, We'll talk later. Keep your head down. With one last hard look at Stag, Eli turned away from the confrontation and led Charlie away, the crowd parting to make way for them. They could hear Stag's voice grow faint as he argued with the sheriff, but they kept walking, moving further down the dusty street and away from their perilous encounter. As the tension slowly ebbed away, Charlie couldn't help but feel a surge of curiosity about Eli's past. What had driven him to leave the gang? And what secrets did he carry from that dark chapter of his life? The answers, she knew, were hidden somewhere deep within Eli's soul, waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 5: The Outlaw's Code. The ghost town of Tumbleweed lay under a blazing sun, its buildings half buried in the sand, and its streets silent but for the howling wind. It was a desolate place, a relic of a bygone era, but it offered the perfect cover for Charlie and Eli. They had decided to lay low for a while, taking refuge in the eerie, abandoned town. As they made their way through the dusty streets, the creaking of wooden signs and the hollow echoes of their footsteps underscored the eerie quiet. The place seemed like a world forgotten, lost in the sands of time. In one of the crumbling saloons, they met a grizzled bartender, Hank, who served them drinks that tasted like memories. Hank, a wiry man with a gray beard that flowed like an old riverbed, had a gleam in his eye. You two ain't the usual kind that find their way here. What's your business in Tumbleweed? Charlie glanced at Eli, who nodded, a silent agreement that it was time to be cautious but honest. We're just passing through, she said, looking for a place to rest and gather our thoughts. Hank nodded knowingly. Well, Tumbleweed's a good place for that. We get all sorts here, drifters, outlaws, wanderers. Some folks even say it's haunted, but I reckon the ghosts here have long moved on to better pastures. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the ink-black sky, Charlie and Eli settled into a corner booth in the saloon. Hank, warming to their presence, leaned on the bar, joining them with a bottle of whiskey. Eli gazed into the amber liquid as if it held the secrets of the universe. You ever feel like the past never really lets go? He mused, his voice rough with emotion. Charlie studied him for a moment, recognizing a chink in the armor he had kept around himself. Sometimes, Eli. The past has a way of catching up, but it's what we do with it that matters. Eli's eyes held 1,000 stories, and he decided to share one of them. You know, I was once part of a gang back east. We did some terrible things, things that still haunt me. But I left that life behind, and now I'm trying to make amends. Charlie leaned in, her curiosity piqued. What made you change, Eli? He sighed, his gaze fixed on a distant memory. I saw the face of a young girl, not much older than you, crying over her father's body. We had robbed their farm and killed him in cold blood. It was a moment of reckoning, and I knew I had to change. Charlie was silent for a moment, contemplating the depths of Eli's past. I know what it's like to want to make things right. I've been chasing vengeance for so long, it's hard to see anything else. Eli's eyes met hers, and a sense of understanding passed between them. Sometimes, vengeance and redemption aren't so different. We're all trying to reckon with our pasts and find a way to make peace. As the night wore on, Hank shared stories of Tumbleweed, the outlaws who had come through, and the unspoken code that bound them, a code that sometimes blurred the lines between right and wrong. It was a world where loyalties ran deep, and justice was often a matter of perspective. For Charlie and Eli, Tumbleweed was a place of reflection, a sanctuary in the shifting sands of their journey. It was a place where the echoes of the past whispered in the wind, reminding them that the choices they made would shape their futures, and where the blurred lines of the outlaws' code added new layers of complexity to their quest for redemption. Chapter 6: Treacherous Trails. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape as Charlie and Eli forged deeper into the unforgiving wilderness. The expansive plains seemed to stretch endlessly before them, their vastness overwhelming. The whispering wind carried tales of secrets buried in the earth, secrets they were determined to uncover. Eli's steely eyes surveyed the horizon with a hint of wariness. His past life as an outlaw had taught him to trust his instincts, and they were currently on high alert. He signaled for Charlie to halt, his index finger pressed to his lips. He crouched down low, his hand resting on the grip of his weathered revolver. Charlie, he whispered, we're not alone out here. Charlie, her senses finely tuned from years spent on the ranch, nodded in agreement. She scanned the surroundings, her fingers gently resting on the stock of her lever-action rifle. The world around them was alive with unseen danger. From the tall, rustling grass emerged a hungry pack of coyotes, their gaunt faces filled with an insatiable desire for food. The predators circled closer, their eerie howls echoing through the stillness of the plains. Charlie and Eli backed against a rocky outcrop, their eyes locked on the advancing beasts. With a calculated precision, they aimed their weapons, waiting for the right moment to strike. The tension in the air was palpable, every heartbeat sounding like a drumbeat in their ears. As the coyotes closed in, teeth bared and eyes gleaming with feral hunger, Charlie and Eli opened fire, the crack of their guns breaking the eerie silence. Coyotes yelped and tumbled in the dirt, their lives extinguished by the sharp retort of bullets. Breathing heavily, Charlie and Eli checked their surroundings, ensuring no other threats lurked nearby. They had passed the first trial of the treacherous wilderness, their bond deepening with every challenge they faced. The journey continued, and the landscape seemed to grow more hostile with each step. The sun's relentless blaze gave way to a sudden, chilling gust of wind that swept across the plains, carrying with it the biting sting of a coming storm. The sky darkened as the first raindrops splattered upon the parched earth, rapidly turning the firm ground into a quagmire of mud. It was a race against time to find shelter, their horses struggling to maintain a steady pace through the muck. In the distance, a copse of gnarled trees beckoned them, their twisted branches forming a skeletal shelter against the tempest that raged above. Charlie and Eli dismounted and tethered their horses, seeking refuge beneath the sparse canopy. Hours passed, and the storm unleashed its fury with torrential rain and deafening thunder. Their clothes clung to their shivering bodies, and the earth beneath them turned to a mire of mud. The storm was a fierce adversary, testing their resolve as they huddled together, taking solace in the warmth of their shared presence. The storm eventually relented, leaving behind a world transformed, the air crisp, and the ground cleansed. They remounted their horses, weary yet emboldened, and continued their quest with an unbreakable resolve. The treacherous wilderness had thrown its harshest challenges their way, and Charlie and Eli had met them head on, stronger than ever. Each test they faced, whether it was the predatory wild or the merciless elements, forged their bond and carried them one step closer to the relentless pursuit of Snake Eyes. Chapter 7: Closer to the Truth. The town of Blackwater loomed on the horizon, its reputation preceding it like a shadow cast across the river. Its streets were bustling with activity, yet beneath the facade of civilization, a dark undercurrent flowed, feeding the very elements that had led to the rise of men like Snake Eyes Quillen. It was in this town, with its muddy streets and weathered buildings, that Charlie and Eli's journey took an unexpected turn. As they rode into Blackwater, the pair sought out the informant who had whispered Snake Eyes' secrets in hushed tones. The sun was sinking behind the buildings, casting long shadows that seemed to swallow the town whole. They found the informant, a wiry man with a ragged coat and an air of desperation, in a dimly lit saloon. His name was Jeb, and his eyes darted nervously as he confirmed what they had suspected. Snake Eyes and his gang had been making regular visits to a hidden hideout near the cliffs of Lake Don Julio, a desolate and unforgiving place. It was there they believed Snake Eyes would gather his ill-gotten treasures, and perhaps even keep evidence of the crimes he had committed. With this newfound information, Charlie and Eli set to work on a plan. They knew that approaching the gang's hideout head-on would be a death sentence. Instead, they decided on a cunning subterfuge. They would pose as travelers in need, lost souls seeking shelter from the harsh wilderness, playing the part of innocent wanderers drawn to the remote beauty of Lake Don Julio. They gathered supplies, including ragged clothes and a pair of horses that looked like they'd seen better days. Eli adjusted his demeanor to match his role, adopting the weariness of a man beaten down by life. Charlie, ever the skilled actress, portrayed a young woman in search of her missing brother, emphasizing vulnerability. The journey to Lake Don Julio was an arduous one, with its unforgiving terrain and ever-present threat of danger. They arrived at the gang's hideout, a collection of makeshift tents nestled among the cliffs. Smoke from a campfire wafted up into the evening sky, and the sound of low laughter and the strumming of a guitar filled the air. Charlie and Eli approached cautiously, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They were welcomed into the gang's camp with wary smiles, the outlaws mistaking them for easy prey. It was there, amidst the darkness and deceit, that Charlie and Eli would draw closer to the truth, seeking the evidence that would finally bring Snake Eyes to justice. The tension in the camp was palpable as the duo weaved their web of deception, gaining the trust of the outlaws, who had grown complacent in their isolation. With each passing moment, they inched closer to their quarry, praying that their ruse would hold long enough for them to gather the damning evidence they needed. As night descended upon the camp, the stakes grew higher, and the cost of discovery became all the more apparent. Charlie and Eli had ventured into the lion's den, their fate hanging in the balance as they moved with utmost caution, inching closer to the truth they so desperately sought. Chapter 8: Shadows of Betrayal. The moon hung low on the horizon as Charlie and Eli crouched in the tall grass, their breaths hushed and their eyes locked on the flickering campfires scattered throughout the rugged canyons near Lake Don Julio. They had managed to infiltrate the camp, but the treacherous terrain and the inky darkness concealed countless dangers. Silently, they watched as the outlaw gang, led by the cunning Snake Eyes, reveled around the campfires. The atmosphere was filled with raucous laughter and the low hum of conversation, but a palpable tension hung in the air. The outlaws' firelight danced on their faces, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance with the flames. Charlie, her heart pounding, leaned close to Eli, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is the moment, Eli. We're deep in their territory, and there's no turning back. We have to find the traitor." Eli nodded in agreement. "We'll have to be smart about this, Charlie. The traitor is among Snake Eyes' inner circle. Let's blend in, gather information, and stay vigilant." They inched their way closer, the scent of burning wood and the sound of muffled laughter growing stronger. As they approached, Charlie noticed a wiry man with a scruffy beard and a scarred face, talking in hushed tones to another gang member. Eli's keen eyes followed the exchange. "That's Jeb Slick Thornton. He's a potential suspect. Keep an eye on him." The duo surreptitiously joined a group of outlaws around a fire, their faces concealed by their hats and shadows. They listened, their ears finely tuned to the conversations that swirled around them. Talk of robberies, rival gangs, and the law filled the air, but there was an underlying unease, a sense that something was amiss. Then, Charlie overheard a fragment of conversation that sent shivers down her spine. "Snake Eyes ain't gonna like that we lost those weapons last week. We had a good deal set up." Eli exchanged a knowing glance with Charlie. The missing weapons were part of a lead they had been pursuing. Could this be the traitor? Or was it a cunning diversion to throw them off the scent? Their suspicions grew, but they needed more concrete evidence. Night after night, they continued their observation, collecting whispers and insinuations like breadcrumbs. Each new piece of information added to the mounting tension. One evening, as the moon reached its zenith, they witnessed a secret meeting among Snake Eyes, Jeb, Slick, Thornton, and a few other trusted lieutenants. The conversation was held in a hushed, conspiratorial tone. "I got a line on a big score," Snake Eyes muttered. "A bank in Blackwater, ripe for the taking." Jeb Slick Thornton interjected. "Sounds good, but don't forget the other arrangements. Our friend in Blackwater's gonna want a piece of that pie." Charlie's heart raced as she realized the extent of the betrayal. They had found the traitor, working closely with Snake Eyes, planning robberies that could destabilize the region further. Eli gripped her arm, understanding the gravity of the situation. The pair retreated to a hidden vantage point, their eyes reflecting the fires that painted their faces in an ominous crimson. "We've got our traitor," Charlie whispered. "Now, it's time to bring justice." Eli nodded, a steely resolve in his eyes. They knew that confronting Snake Eyes and his gang would be more perilous than ever, but they were prepared to do whatever it took to expose the traitor and bring an end to the outlaw's reign. As they retreated into the darkness, they knew that the final showdown was imminent. The shadows of betrayal would soon give way to the reckoning they had been chasing, and the fate of their quest for redemption hung in the balance. Chapter 9: Showdown in the Canyons. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged canyons that stretched like ancient scars around Lake Don Julio. The silence of the desolate landscape was soon shattered by the rhythmic clip-clopping of hooves on rocky terrain as Charlie and Eli approached their final destination. It was here, in the unforgiving heart of the Wild West, that their long and arduous journey would reach its dramatic climax. As they descended into the canyons, the walls of rock seemed to rise higher with each step, as if the land itself was closing in around them. Dust devils twirled in the distance, mirages dancing on the shimmering horizon, distorting the boundaries between reality and illusion. The canyons held secrets, and the wind carried whispers of the countless tales of those who had perished in this unforgiving land. Finally, they arrived at a secluded clearing, a place where a small, crystal clear creek meandered through the dusty earth, providing an oasis of life in the midst of the barren terrain. It was here that Snake Eyes and his gang had made their camp, hidden from prying eyes. Charlie and Eli dismounted, the crunch of their boots on the parched earth echoing in the stillness. They exchanged a knowing glance, their faces grim but determined. The tension in the air was palpable, a storm brewing on the horizon. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, low and menacing. Well, if it ain't our dear friends from Armadillo. You two just can't seem to stay out of trouble, can ya? It was Snake Eyes, emerging from the shadows with a sinister grin on his face. Surrounding Snake Eyes were his gang, a motley crew of misfits and cutthroats, each armed to the teeth. The setting sun cast an eerie glow on their faces, emphasizing the wickedness that resided within. Eli's hand tightened around the grip of his Colt, but Charlie held up a hand, her gaze unwavering as she spoke. We're not here for trouble, Snake Eyes. We're here for justice. The outlaw leader let out a cruel laugh that reverberated through the canyons. Justice? You really believe that, girl? You think you can just waltz in here and bring justice to this lawless land? Eli stepped forward, his voice a low growl. Justice is what we make it. And it starts with taking you in. The tension thickened, the air crackling with the weight of unspoken threats. Snake Eyes, ever the manipulator, seemed to be weighing his options. All right then, let's dance, shall we? With those words, the standoff turned into a whirlwind of chaos and violence. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the canyon walls, and bullets whizzed through the air. Charlie and Eli took cover behind rocks, their shots measured and accurate, while the gang members, driven by desperation, fired indiscriminately. Amid the smoke and the roar of gunfire, moral choices presented themselves. Charlie hesitated as she locked eyes with a young gang member, not much older than herself. His expression was one of fear and desperation. In that moment, she had to decide whether to show mercy or deal a harsh hand of justice. Eli, on the other hand, faced his own reckoning as he confronted a former comrade from his days as an outlaw. Their shared history weighed heavily on them, and their bullets were guided not just by hatred, but also by regret. The canyons bore witness to the culmination of their journey, where bullets and choices were fired with equal force. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a shadow over the blood-stained ground, and as the dust settled, the echoes of the past began to fade, leaving the promise of redemption in their wake. The night was cast in a shroud of darkness, the crimson hue of the setting sun gradually succumbing to the ever-encroaching twilight. The rugged canyons near Lake Don Julio formed the eerie backdrop for the climactic showdown. Snake Eyes Camp lay nestled amidst these unforgiving stone giants, a place where countless lives had been shattered and countless dreams had turned to dust. Charlie and Eli had meticulously planned their assault on the gang's stronghold, leveraging every piece of information they painstakingly gathered during their long, perilous journey. They had allies, the few good souls who remained among the gang, willing to share information in return for a chance at redemption. As they approached the camp, a profound silence hung heavy in the air. The wind whispered through the crevices, and the desolation of the place seemed to bear witness to the blood that would soon be spilled. Snake Eyes' gang was a motley crew, bound by a code as unforgiving as the desert itself. Among them, Charlie and Eli spotted faces familiar from their encounters over the past weeks: the traitor who had almost exposed them in Blackwater, the bloodthirsty enforcer, and the cunning swindler who had tried to con them out of their reward money. The confrontation was swift, and bullets filled the night like fireflies, creating a chaotic ballet of death and determination. In the heart of it all, Snake Eyes himself stood tall, his dark eyes burning with an unholy fire, his demeanor unwavering in the face of the storm. Charlie and Eli moved in unison, a perfectly synchronized duo. Eli's lightning-fast draw and precision shooting were matched by Charlie's sharp eye and nimble footwork. Together, they fought their way through the chaos, each shot a step closer to justice, each footfall ringing with the echoes of their quest for redemption. As the battle raged on, Charlie found herself face to face with Snake Eyes. It was a tense standoff, the culmination of all her pain and longing for justice. She looked into the eyes of the man who had taken her family from her, who had led her on this perilous journey. In that moment, she understood the depth of his malevolence, the heart of darkness that had driven him to such cruel deeds. With a resolute aim, she squeezed the trigger, and the shot rang out. Snake Eyes staggered back, bloodied, and fell to the unforgiving earth. Justice, it seemed, had been served. But as the dust settled and the fires smoldered, Charlie and Eli could not escape the somber truth of what they had done. They had left a trail of pain and death in their wake, and the cost of their vengeance weighed heavy on their hearts. In the aftermath of the battle, with the surviving gang members subdued, the lawmen arrived to collect their prisoners and the bodies. It was a bittersweet moment of victory. Charlie and Eli had achieved their goal, but they had also become a part of the violence and cruelty that had plagued the Wild West for so long. The next morning, the sun rose over the unforgiving landscape, bathing it in a harsh, golden light. Charlie and Eli stood at the edge of the canyons, the vast expanse of the frontier stretching out before them. It was time to part ways. They had found their redemption in different ways. For Charlie, it was the closure she had sought for so long. For Eli, it was a chance to make amends for his past. But the Wild West, with its untamed beauty and unforgiving brutality, remained unchanged. With a final, lingering look at each other, they turned their backs on the setting sun, walking away into the boundless horizon. Each step took them further from the past and deeper into the annals of history, where their stories would be etched alongside the countless others who had roamed this land. Hey there, fellow fiction enthusiasts. I hope you've been enjoying the audio stories on MutedGamerFiction as much as I've loved bringing them to you. Your support means the world to me, and today, I've got a small request for you. If you've been relishing these audiobooks and fan fiction tales, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment, and, of course, subscribe if you haven't already. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions are like fuel to my storytelling fire, and they keep this channel going strong. I'd also love to hear from you. Whether you've got a particular fan fiction suggestion you're dying to share, or simply want to say hi, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. This channel is a community of like-minded fans, and your input is incredibly valuable. So, thank you once again for being a part of MutedGamerFiction. Keep those headphones on, immerse yourself in our stories, and let's continue this exciting journey together. Your support keeps the stories coming, and I can't wait to see what fan fiction ideas you have in mind. Happy listening, and remember to hit those like, comment, and subscribe buttons. See you in the next chapter.